On this episode, we have exciting news. Enlist E3 has full approval to plant commercially with no restrictions. We have supply, so call your Merschman Seeds dealer to secure seed on your farm. Hear Joe's story about how Enlist came to market and the advantages of this new technology.
Hi, this is Joe Merschman, and welcome to episode 17 of Cup of Joe. Pretty exciting week. This past week, got a lot of new information to share with you, and I'd like to start off by saying, if you haven't heard the news, Philippines have approved the grain import of Enlist E3, and that was done on Thursday of this week. So that means that we have unrestricted ability to plant and start selling Enlist E3 soybeans. And if you're not familiar with Enlist E3 soybeans, that is a combination of glyphosate, glyphosate, and also the new Colex D technology 2,4-D. And I know there's some questions that farmers have about that, but before I go into that, I'd just like to give you a little background on how did we get to where we're at today. It all started back in 1999, 20 years ago. In fact, how old were you 20 years ago, Ben?
Oh, about 7.
7?
I was 12. I was in 6th grade.
So it's been a long time coming. Yeah, I mean,
Congratulations, by the way, Joe. I mean, this is absolutely, it's huge.
We met in our conference room, the Stein family and the Merschman family, to put this plan together. So it's been a lot of time and a lot of money and a little heartbreak along the way to get to where we're at today. But we do now finally have what I'm calling the dynamic dual available to our customers, and that's LibertyLink GT27s, and that's a combination of glufosinate, glyphosate, and Group 27 herbicide tolerance, which is going to be, when the label comes out, Elite 27, which will be a pre-emerge. And of course now we just received the Philippine approval on Enlist E3, the grain import approval, so that product is, as you know, is glyphosate, glufosinate, and then the new Colex D technology for 2,4-D. So yeah, 20 years,
Wow.
That's a long time, and it just tells you how complex and how difficult it is to get traits through the system. It's kind of interesting to know when Roundup Ready 1 was approved back in the day, it took 6 months to get through the USDA, FDA, and EPA in the United States. That was when President Clinton was in office. And the complexity has grown since that. Well, I know it's at least a minimum of 7 years now to get the same thing done in the United States. And then in the meantime, we have over 30-some countries out there that have a say-so in the regulatory approval before any product can be launched. So it is a big day for the American farmer and for Merschman dealers and their customers to have access to this new technology, which is desperately needed to control the weeds that are out there. So I'm sure you've got some questions, and one of the things we did tell you what Enlist E3 is. It's a triple stack of glyphosate, glufosinate, and the new Colex D technology 2,4-D, which is a different type of 2,4-D, and it's the only 2,4-D that you can put over top of Enlist E3 soybeans. And the reason why is because it's formulated differently. It has almost zero volatility and very low drift. And of course, 2,4-D is different than Diecamba. And Ben, you might explain the difference between, even though they're in the same classification of herbicides, what is the difference between the Colex D, 2,4-D, and Diecamba?
So there's two complete differences. I mean, they're both growth regulators, so they're in the auxin family of the growth regulators, but they have different sites of action. So they bind to different proteins to kill the plant in different ways. So
you can't use Diecamba on Enlist E3 soybeans, and you can't use the new Colex D 2,4-D on Extend soybeans.
Yep, the plants are built in completely different ways, and the chemicals work completely different. In fact, I mean, we all know that the 2,4-D is a contact, and the Diecamba is a systemic style herbicide. So they work different. They're in the same class because they're both auxins, but they're both very potent chemicals, and they both work very well to kill weeds.
And another key difference is soybeans are probably one of the most sensitive plants out there to Diecamba, and they're actually fairly tolerant to 2,4-D. A non-Enlist E3 soybean is actually fairly tolerant to 2,4-D. So, in other words, if a little bit of the new Colex D 2,4-D would contact a non Enlist E3 soybean, it would not be nothing. The damage would be totally different than the Diecamba damage, and plus because it's contact, the new growth would not show any damage at all.
Correct.
So there's a big difference there. In fact, soybeans are not even considered sensitive to 2,4-D.
That is correct.
Where
so when you
Diecamba, they are.
Yep, when you have your downwind buffers and all that stuff, when you have to pay attention to downwind buffers on your Diecamba label, that's not necessarily applied to the 2,4-D.
What is the downwind buffer on a sensitive crop, which soybeans are not a sensitive crop, but what is the downwind buffer?
It would be
30 feet, right?
30 feet,
yep.
30 feet.
So it's a lot different than the 120 feet that you have with Diecamba.
Right, and to the average American farmer, that's not going to affect the majority of any crop.
So that's one of the things they need to check up on their label and get some education on. But it is a much easier technology to manage. And of course, it's got the glyphosate in it, which they have a special herbicide called Enlist I, which is straight goods XD technology 2,4-D that can be tank mixed with glyphosate. If you're not familiar with what glyphosate is, some of the brand names are Liberty and also Interline, yes. Those are the two choices that you have as far as mixing with Enlist I. So, and of course they do have Enlist Dual, which is a premix of Roundup. Glyphosate is the correct word I should use, that you can use. And of course, there is some restrictions on how that, you have to use the right kind of glyphosate with, if you're doing a tank mix with Enlist I, which is straight goods 2,4-D.
Well, it all has to do with which type of glyphosate you choose. If it's a potassium-based glyphosate, like some of the products out on the market, you have to make sure that you get the tank recirculated after you dump your glyphosate in, and then you can dump your 2,4-D in. Otherwise, you're going to have some gumming up in the nozzles. So,
a couple other things on the Enlist E3 technology. Okay, farmer says, can I just put like regular 2,4-D ahead of it for my burn down? Can I do that with Enlist E3 soybeans?
According to the label, no. You have to use the XD technology to make sure that you're burning down. Otherwise, you have to follow the regular ester and amine formulation where it's a 2-week plant back. So
if you did use regular 2,4-D, you'd have to wait 2 weeks before you could plant. But if you use the
Enlist Duo or Enlist
yes.
I, you'd be able to follow the planter.
You could plant right away.
Yep.
No restrictions.
That's absolutely correct.
So that's a key difference that farmers need to know.
Yep.
So that's pretty exciting news. Let me tell you a little bit about Merschman Seeds and what we plan to do. We do have supply of Enlist E3 soybeans. It's in our seed guide. And we have limited quantities, and we will accept new orders for these products. And we have them basically from 2.0 all the way into Group 4. We have probably a best supply in Group 2 and 3 and a very limited supply in Group 4. So if any of you are interested in trying Enlist E3 soybeans, you can contact your Merschman seed dealer. We will not accept substitutions or cancellations of your existing order, but if you want to order additional soybeans, we will accept orders for Enlist E3 soybeans from Merschman Seeds. We are gearing up next year with seed production. We're going to plant a huge supply of Enlist E3 soybeans and LibertyLink GT27s, the dynamic dual, for farmers to have choice, and we hope that BASF will get that Elite 27 pre-emerge herbicide label by a year from this spring, which we think we're pretty confident. They've been working on it 13 years, so I think it's going to happen. This tells you how complex that part is to get even a new herbicide for not necessarily a new herbicide, but a herbicide for a new use. Everything it just takes a lot of time, and there's a lot of hurdles that have to be jumped before we can get these approvals. So anyhow, Enlist E3, the good news is full speed ahead now. Another new option, and as we're talking to farmers, I know Tommy, you talk to farmers every day. What are they saying about Enlist E3 soybeans?
Usually it's how many do you have and how many can I get. But right now I think a lot of farmers, the ones that I've just talked to it about, is they understand the formulations, they understand the new 2,4-D technology. There's been a lot of good literature on that because we've been kind of puffing this up for the last 5 years, Joe. Yeah. And so we've been talking about it a lot. So I think they're very eager. They're ready to go. They love the idea of not having to use Diecamba soybeans when they feel that they were forced to buy them to protect themselves. So now there's another player to the game, and they feel like they have a little bit of a breath of fresh air for a new technology.
You know, farmers have choices,
That's
and,
right.
and that's going to create competition. And I know farmers love to have at least 3 people knocking on their door asking for the business. So this is a positive thing for farmers. And I got to give Harry Stein a lot of credit for his visionary planning ahead and looking forward to doing this, because this was just a tremendous endeavor to come to market with 2 brand new traits, LibertyLink GT27s and Enlist E3 through MS Technologies, which Merschman Seeds is one of the owners of that particular company. So it gives our company a front row seat to bring these products to our customers, and we're going to do everything possible to make a big supply available to them.
I think one of the most impressive things, talking to some growers out in the field, is Joe, is we have released LibertyLink GT27 soybeans, and now we're releasing Enlist E3 soybeans, and they're, like you said, the dynamic duo. They are 2 very potent traded soybeans with genetics to back it up. Nothing to shake a finger at, especially when it comes to quality and yield, for sure, of everything that we've been seeing. So I mean, it's a very exciting time with these new choices, if you want to call it that way.
I like that you brought up the yield aspect, particularly of Enlist E3. Just so our listeners understand, the Enlist E3 was made in a lab in Ames that MS Tech is associated with, and basically they put the glyphosate, the glufosinate, and the 2,4-D gene basically all into one construct or one individual gene, and then they did a single insertion. So it's very clean, very non-disruptive to do it this way, as opposed to breeding stacks and the complexity that goes into breeding stacks. So the speed that we can go with our breeding is very fast compared to breeding stacks. So that's going to be one of the reasons why the yields are so good, because it's such a great product to work with in the breeding programs. And the other thing too, Tommy, is we've had plenty of time to work on these soybeans.
Right.
I know, talking to Harry Stein, he goes, the delays are not all bad, Joe. He says, that gives us more time to get the genetics right.
Sure.
We're not going to be coming to market with products that are half baked. I mean, they've been fully baked, they've been tested, they've been refined, and we've had a lot of unique conditions to test them under. So that aspect should give the American farmer a really good feel that it wasn't a rush to meet a Wall Street deadline, which some of our competitors sometimes seem to be in that fix, which it makes kind of fall on your face launches, and that's not going to happen with Enlist E3 or LibertyLink GT27s. They're good solid products.
We dotted all the I's and crossed all the T's.
I think so, and so we should feel we're confident and look at these products and plan them, and then once they see how the weed control works, there's one thing that farmers don't need. They don't need more stress in their life.
Exactly.
They got enough stress with the markets and the weather. Their weed control, this is going to make things much simpler, and they're going to be very happy. So I encourage farmers to get a field out there this spring, take a look at them, and then be prepared to go next year in a big way in 2020.
Absolutely.
Ben, what did you have this week? I think you've been hearing some things from Arkansas.
Yep. So the Arkansas Plant Board has made changes to their new Diecamba label that they're running with. So the board reached a decision that May 25th is going to be their cutoff for being able to spray Diecamba.
May 25th.
So they have an early spring cutoff for their spray date. Mm-hmm. They have some pretty warm temperatures, obviously, down in Arkansas, so they're trying to avoid some of the volatilization by having that early cutoff date. They also have half-mile buffer zones around non-Diecamba crops. They have 1-mile buffers around research stations. So anybody that's testing, like the University of Arkansas, for all of their things that they have going on down there, they're trying to make sure that those research stations don't get dinged, because I know that Jason Norsworthy, in some of our conversations that we've had with him, he's had issues doing some of these testing because of local farmers around have been volatilizing on the crops that he's growing. So 1-mile buffers around those, and organic or specialty crops. So that's going to save some of the orchards and vineyards and stuff that have been dinged down there for that. So it's a good improvement for the Arkansas farmer and the specialty growers, and so they're making some big headway down there.
It kind of makes a statement.
Well,
for sure.
Arkansas has been like on the leading edge of trying to manage volatility, and so their efforts to try to do that is to protect sensitive or to protect sensitive crops should be applauded. There's one thing I think I read in there. What about tank mixing of Diecamba and glyphosate or Roundup?
They are regulating the fact of the Diecamba needs to be sprayed. The Extendamax or the Fexapan or Ingenia has to be sprayed by itself. So because when you add glyphosate to the portion, it lowers the pH, and we all know that when the pH gets lowered, it raises the volatility of the solution. So it's no different than AMS or anything like that. When you use a buffering agent to lower the pH of the spray solution, it makes it hotter, and that's what increases the volatility. So they're regulating the fact that you can use Roundup they're regulating the fact that you can use Roundup in their tank mix.
They can use it or can't use it?
Cannot use it.
Cannot use Roundup. So in other words, when they sprayed straight goods Diecamba, no Roundup can be mixed in with it in Arkansas.
That is correct.
And because of volatility, because of the increase of volatility. So, that's really ironic because there's a farmer, Brian Burke, 12 miles from our office, and the first year he sprayed that particular product, he sprayed straight goods Diecamba, and he said he saw less volatility than when he mixed the Roundup. And I remember him saying that to me, and now here after so many years of it's been 3 years now, that proved he was ahead of his time at that time, at least noticing that. So if you are going to spray Diecamba on your Extend soybeans, even in Iowa, which we don't have that rule, or in Missouri or Illinois for that matter, Kansas and Indiana, it would be best to spray it straight.
Yep, straight goods and early. If you have to spray the product and you feel like that's the route that you want to run, you spray early and you spray without glyphosate. So
that would potentially be more respectful to a neighbor that has a sensitive crop.
Yep, it limits your liability.
Yep, there's a lot of data to back that up about with mixing Diecamba and glyphosate. Now, with your professional opinion, Ben, when hearing a lot of competitors talk about Extendiflex, which is going to be Liberty Diecamba stack, do you think that are they going to be able to tank mix Diecamba and Liberty together?
According to what I've heard from the researchers between University of Missouri, Illinois, and Arkansas, there's no way that will ever be a combination, because Liberty goes above and beyond what the glyphosate portion does.
Okay.
So the
So
glyphosate goes above and beyond.
Well, you have to mix AMS in with Liberty to create the burning effect that it needs, and of course if you put AMS in with Diecamba, that makes the pH much lower, so therefore it makes it more volatile. So it doesn't make sense that if you left the AMS out, then your Liberty piece is not going to work very good. I could see where that, unless they reinvent the formulation of Diecamba.
So essentially, you just have a Diecamba probably pre-emerge and then Liberty post.
Yep, on the Extendiflex, that's probably going to be their
nobody
speculating.
knows.
Speculation.
But
I was just curious.
Speculating, I would imagine that's the route.
A lot of people are talking about that in the field. They think that would be the next big thing to come.
Right.
So.
Right. And speaking of next big things, I'm hearing through the grapevine, and again, it's speculation on my point. I would look to the state of Illinois to see some changes next week. I would love to have some
on
more
their
news
Diecamba label.
Yep, on their Diecamba label. I would look to have some different news from the state of Illinois to have some changes on their Diecamba label next year. A little more restrictive.
So stay tuned for that. We'll report that next week if that comes out.
Yep.
Good.
Well, Tommy,
I got two things, Joe. Number one is I want to talk about there's some new brush meters coming out from Kinsey. They're a 54 cell plate.
for soybeans?
For soybeans, yes, sorry. In years past, we've had some issues, or everybody, the industry-wide's had some issues with different soybean seed size and having some issues getting it through their planters. I'm not exactly sure, and we can check into this, about what John Deere has to combat with this, I guess. But this new 54 cell plate will take anything from 2,000 pounds per 2,000 seeds per pound to 3,000 seeds per pound. So that's a wide range, especially a lot for what we kind of do here. So just something new and innovative that's to help the farmer.
You know, Kinsey's a pretty innovative
sure.
company, and they obviously listen to their customers, and they don't like changing their plates out any more than anybody else when it's time to go. So that would be they say a 54 cell.
54 cell, yeah.
Which is different than their 60 cell plate.
Exactly.
And their 60 cell plate can handle, on their paperwork they claim to handle 2,200 seeds per pound, but really our planter professional that we have that works for Merschman Seeds, it's more like 2,400 if you're not going to.
Right. So this 54 cell is going to give you that wide range of what you're wanting. That really, and so there's an adapter that you can put on. I think all of 2018 or newer planters are going to be standard with these. Otherwise, you can buy an adapter for any of your old planters to use that.
So check with your local Kinsey dealer and check into it if you want to potentially, knowing what your seat size is, so you don't have to stop.
Being out in the field, we've seen a lot of headaches. I mean, every company, the whole industry wide, like I said, it's just been an issue. It's something that's talked about every year around spring, and we kind of forget about it. I just wanted to remind people when they're getting the planters ready and the tractors ready for spring here. But and then the other thing I wanted to say was just from Ben and I, thank you, Joe, for everything that you've done to bring this Enlist and LLGT27. You and Harry have done a lot, and 20 years ago, I mean, wow.
I know we didn't think it was going to take this long, believe me.
I could imagine.
But I know my dad's just turned 91, and he would always kid Harry, "You better hurry up! I can't hang in here too much longer." So he got to see it. So that's awesome. A big day for my dad to to be a part of it and see this. So really excited about it, and we're hopeful for a great coming year for our farmers and customers that try this new technology and the dynamic dual LibertyLink GT27 and Enlist E3. We think we're going to offer some great options, and the genetics look great. The new products, like I said, the class of products that we're bringing to market for 2020 is the best that I've ever seen, bar none. And so we're excited about that. So.
I'll say something.
Well, that's about as exciting as we can make Cup of Joe this week with the approval. I don't know what we can do to top that, but we do appreciate everybody that listens in and watches. And if you have a question, take advantage of our opportunity to send a question in to Cup of Joe, because we certainly address it. And in the meantime, thank you for your business, and we'll see you next week.
Cups empty here.